We have a question from Stephen Ma. I'm a 205-pound rider in gear. I'm on the slower side, running mid to rear pack intermediate group. My bike is a 2008 600 RR with 17,000 miles, stock suspension. No maintenance has been done to the suspension, but it has been adjusted by a suspension shop, which basically meant full stiff and backing out 1 to 2 clicks on everything. Also, mostly the bike is street at the moment, but I do a bunch of track days and might even start racing next season. Here's my question. Is revalving and respringing the factory suspension components a waste of money, or should I wait until my speed is up, save money, and get something like Penske or Olin suspension? Also, since my suspension now sits at practically full stiff, will getting a spring and revalving the front suspension allow for some real adjustment, i.e. be in the range? Would I be able to get that to soften up some in regards to respringing and revalving? I'm having some mid-turn at apex rear tire sliding issues when I'm getting on the gas, but I'm not sure if this is rider, tire, or suspension related. Okay, Stephen, very comprehensive set of information there, and let's tackle this one thing at a time. Firstly, when the suspension shop set the bike up, did they tell you what the sag numbers were? Do you have any idea? Do you have a zip tie on your front fork that is showing you how much travel you are using? If you have a bunch of unused travel, and be aware that there is a mechanical bottom out on that fork, it doesn't go all the way down. That will tell you right away with something that simple whether the bike is too stiff in terms of the settings that they put into the bike. Also, when you run the hydraulics in on rebound and compression that tight with each other, they can interfere, creating a harsh ride, or shall we say less than supple suspension. So there are some questions there in opening up the hydraulics in terms of getting, at least for now until you get the bike fixed, a much more comfortable and more appropriate hydraulic setting than just turn it all the way in. In general, you should be somewhere in the region of about 1 turn out on all the hydraulics. So shutting them or getting them damn near close to shut is not helping you at all. So take a look at that. It's a very simple experiment you can do with the front end. And with the rear shock, what I do is bring it down 1 notch preload at a time if they put it all the way up to the top, and see how that feels. So do the hydraulic change first, do the preload change second, and then hopefully the bike will start coming to you. Now, in regards to revalving, respringing, and is that a waste of money? Trust me, it is never a waste of money, ever. It is by far the best bang for the buck that you will ever get with any kind of suspension upgrades. And as I've said many times before, I've competed in races and won some based on redone stock suspension. So, if you want a testimonial as to how valuable that is, don't just take it from me. There are thousands of riders out there that have revalved, resprung their stock equipment, even if it's something like an SV650 with springs, oil, and emulators, to make it work significantly better at a vastly reduced price. So yes, it is worth every penny going ahead and doing that. There are many ways that you can do the revalve respring, and I'll run you through the things we do at our shop. You can go ahead and take out the pistons. We can, depending on the way the piston flows oil, drill them out, create larger holes, and then redo the valving based on the improved oil flow. That's the cheapest level. The next level is to get replacement pistons and replacement shim stacks. Now those, depending on where you get them from, there's many outlets. We use GP Suspension, we use Olin's, and there are other more expensive things like K-Tech that we can use there in terms of just simply 20mm replacement. Those are an intermediate price, so you're looking at probably $500 to $600 for that. Lastly, there is of course a drop-in cartridge kit, which is extremely expensive. In comparative terms, you will be looking at $1,200 for the front and obviously a replacement shock in the rear is going to cost you about the same. So for well under $1,000, if you were to get the front and rear Revalve resprung, you'd have a bike that would last you in terms of suspension. You would never need to upgrade it, you simply need to service the oil. Now, that also requires a very extended conversation with the people that you're going to have rebuild the suspension so that they correctly revalve, knowing your ability and spring accordingly in what you're going to do with the motorcycle. We spend half an hour sometimes with people making sure that what they're getting is exactly what they need, and from an engineering standpoint, when we rebuild, revalve, respring, that all of that will allow that rider to grow significantly in terms of ability, but it's not so far ahead of them that it's like riding a brick and they just can't overcome that barrier quickly in terms of getting the suspension under enough duress to work. So conversations with suspension professionals in terms of revalving, respringing are really, really important and must take an appropriate amount of time. So when you get your stuff back, it exceeds your expectations, but it also, when you get it on the bike, set up, and you go ride it, it inspires you, it gives you confidence, it makes you feel secure, and then that you can progress quickly from that point, trusting the suspension on the motorcycle. The other side of that we actually don't often talk about is that revalving and respringing will make a big difference in tire wear. It will give you much greater longevity in tire wear, and as we all know, tires are outrageously expensive, especially if you use track tires. So having suspension revalved and resprung will make an enormous difference to the improvement in tire wear. Now, one last thing in regards to that is geometry. When you revalve, respring, obviously the bike is going to sit at a different height in the stroke once you've set sag. So you need to go ahead and be prepared to work the front end geometry appropriately. If you are using the stock shock, then it can be lengthened. There's a plastic spacer in there, and that's always a good idea to take it out. But you have different rear ride height as well, especially with a different spring. And lastly, but most importantly, when you revalve, resprung, you have adjustability. You can soften things up, you can stiffen things up, whether it's the street or the track, and you get individual settings for those. And you take the time to write them down and adjust them accordingly. It's not good enough to say, I'll just ride it with the track setting on the street. You're elevating your level of risk, because you cannot, under any circumstances, duplicate the speed, braking forces, corner entry speed that you can at the track on the street. Nor should you try. So hopefully that answered your question. Thanks very much for it, Stephen. If you have questions for me, please send them to Dave Moss Tuning via facebook.com, or alternatively leave them here on YouTube at Catalyst Reaction SBW. Thanks a lot.